I've always been afraid of deep water. That moment when your feet can't touch the bottom and you realize how small you really are. Space takes that fear and strips away everything else. The water, the surface, even the promise that up and down have meaning. Tower of Fantasy's 5.0 Kailo Sector doesn't just put you in space. It invites you to feel the weight of floating in nothing, surrounded by people who've been lost for 50 years and still can't agree on what home means. The expansion attempts something most games avoid, making failure feel like something that shapes you rather than something that you overcome. Whether Hotta Studio succeeds depends on your tolerance for ambition wrapped in technical struggle, and your willingness to find meaning in imperfect execution. Today's video is going to have some spoilers for the 5.0 update for Tower of Fantasy, so if you're not caught up and you don't want to find out, maybe skip this one, but it'll be here for you when you're ready. The expansion aims to push gacha gaming boundaries by giving you seemingly massive zero-gravity environments, complex mecha systems, and ambitious particle effects. These features represent genuine technical advancements, but hardware limitations create persistent problems. Frame rate drops during multi-mecha combat, loading transitions between space zones fall intermittently, and collision detection produces inconsistent results. PlayStation 5 users face particularly frustrating audio issues too. Voiceovers cut out during story moments and background music disappears entirely. And these problems really do break narrative immersion precisely when the game was trying to deliver big story moments. The PS5 controller implementation reveals both innovation and execution problems. Tower of Fantasy attempts to solve the age-old challenge of complex MMO controls on console hardware through creative trackpad utilization. The trackpad serves multiple functions, opening maps, activating crouch, triggering mecha plunge attacks, but these functionalities are poorly explained and frequently trigger unintended actions. Switching between analog stick navigation and the toggleable cursor system can crash the UI entirely, leaving players trapped on frozen screens that don't respond to input. The trackpad cursor activation also feels slow and imprecise, and the constant mode switching between controller and cursor navigation creates cognitive friction that breaks gameplay flow. Over time, if you're like me and other dedicated players, you certainly get used to these features. Despite the issues, Tower of Fantasy deserves credit for attempting a solution to console MMO complexity rather than avoiding the platform entirely. The implementation may come across as janky, but it represents genuine effort to make cross-platform experiences viable where others have simply given up. The Mecha system succeeds brilliantly in creating genuine progression incentives. I had a blast feeling motivated to mine resources and exchange credits for new weapon systems and skins. The early grind felt rewarding. Each upgrade provided tangible improvements to combat effectiveness and visual customization. Unlike many gacha progression systems that feel abstract, unlocking and equipping new mecha parts delivered prolonged and visible results. The system also democratizes exploration in ways that I genuinely appreciate. Players without characters like Ling Han, Antoria, and the latest Aster with her grappling abilities and advanced flight mechanics can still participate in shared space traversal. This approach mirrors Wuthering Wave's flying systems in Renacida, where Genshin Impact's creature transformation systems, providing universal access to advanced movement rather than gating it behind specific character acquisitions. But here's where the catch comes in. Tower of Fantasy and Genshin Impact's design philosophy create a frustrating contradiction. Wuthering Waves allows players to fly around Renacida as their unlocked characters while maintaining their combat effectiveness. You can soar through the skies with your invested roster and still engage enemies with full damage potential. Genshin Impact makes it so that the creature abilities are just downgraded enough from the character releases to make you still want to pull. Whereas Tower of Fantasy takes a different approach. While you can technically cheat the system and fly around space with characters like Antoria and Aster, they're rendered completely useless in combat. Their abilities deal almost no damage to space enemies. You spend potentially hundreds of dollars acquiring these characters for the latest patch with intricate movesets, only to discover that the majority of the region is going to force you into that mandatory mecha gameplay, relegating your carefully collected characters to expensive spectators. If Tower of Fantasy commits to mandatory mecha gameplay for space exploration, they need to dramatically expand the variety and depth of that system. The current selection of mecha modifications is good, but the customization options do feel limited for content that completely replaces character-based gameplay. And I'm not gonna lie, with the latest gameplay release of Hipper, I was really anticipating that she would have her own unique mecha that she equips while flying around, but unfortunately it seems like that might not be the case unless they release it as a separate mecha with her update in the story. I think we'll have to wait to find out. But I personally think that future patch updates should introduce multiple mecha styles, stealth-focused variants, heavy assault configurations, or specialized exploration units. More ambitiously, different starships could transform Kailo navigation from individual mecha piloting to crew-based vessel management. And if you could position your unlocked roster to manage different parts of your ship, I mean, that would be really cool. These additions could elevate Tower of Fantasy into genuinely exciting new territories rather than feeling like they're just replacing your characters. The core issue isn't that the mecha gameplay exists. I actually find that part awesome. It's that players can't choose between character abilities and mecha systems based on preference or tactical needs. Forcing universal mecha adoption for an entire region creates resentment among players who invested heavily in character capabilities. Optional integration would preserve player choice while maintaining the innovations the systems provide. Kailo Sector also attempts to explore complex themes from corporate monopolization to refugee displacement and leadership under crisis. These conflicts mirror the ones in our current media through character interactions, absurdist storytelling, and political maneuvering. The concepts show potential for sophisticated storytelling, but dialogue often explains more than it demonstrates these ideas. Characters announce their motivations directly instead of revealing them through actions. Corporate manipulation discussions feel didactic rather than organic. When Astra addresses Hope Fleet funding ethics, her dialogue delivers exposition rather than character insight. The game attempts mature social commentary but settles for surface-level exploration. My first impression of Astra was admittedly also skeptical. Here's a character venturing into the hostile vacuum of space wearing what essentially amounts to a bikini. The design choice felt ridiculous from a practical standpoint, prioritizing visual appeal over narrative logic or character authenticity, especially if her character is shy. Sales numbers add layers to the choices creative teams have to make for the end design. Recent sales figures and community engagement consistently show that players gravitate towards this type of content, and ultimately, this is entertainment. It's not a documentary about space survival. Tower of Fantasy, like most gacha games, also gets a lot of shit for leaning heavily towards creating mostly female characters. They cover substantial ground in terms of distinct personalities and story arcs, but they definitely leave the male characters left out. This patch might see a big change though, with the introduction of Nanto, who I'm really hoping will be the first altered male character. There's a genuinely diverse spectrum of playfulness, seriousness, savior complex, failure stories, sacrifice narratives, and corruption arcs. The character roster, whatever its visual presentation choices, offers meaningful variety in personality and motivation. Astra's visual design draws clear inspiration from established sci-fi aesthetics, particularly sharing silhouette similarities with Bianca Stigmata's solitary dream coding from Punishing Grey Raven. Both characters utilize irregular rhomboid shapes and asymmetrical ornaments that create more visual intrigue than static rectangles or perfect circles. This shape language moves your eye across the outfit design effectively, creating dynamic visual flow that feels futuristic. However, for me, some of the practical believability becomes a significant challenge. While the design elements are beautiful, like I said before, they made little sense within the character's background or space survival context. I ended up rationalizing her top as a vacuum sealed with a very non-visible transparent film protecting the vital areas from space exposure. But her lower garments remain a little bit puzzling to me, especially some of the fabric placements held by what appears to be staples in very uncomfortable locations. These are compelling visual choices that sacrifice narrative logic for aesthetic appeal. When we compare her 1-star versus 3-star skins, there's also some concerning resource allocation trends. Astra's 3-star variant features dramatic color changes and accessory modifications, but these feel like simple recolors rather than the substantial redesigns earlier characters received. The absence of unique splash art for different advancement levels also hints at tighter production budgets since launch, a troubling pattern that hopefully reverses with future releases. Players have expressed frustrations with these limited skin changes, often describing them as just recolors rather than meaningful visual evolution. This represents a step backwards from Tower of Fantasy's earlier character releases, which featured more comprehensive visual overhauls at higher advancement levels, making them feel more worth it. Despite design contradictions, Astra's movement mechanics represent genuine innovation in gacha gaming. Her Attack on Titan inspired grappling system lets you swing through environments with vertical maneuvering equipment that feels authentic to the source material. Building momentum through these grappling mechanics transitions seamlessly into jetpack dashing once your gauge fills, creating an engaged flow between different movement modes. The stamina management system they created prevents mindless flight while maintaining that engagement through tactical mode switching decisions. And then on top of that, water gliding adds another layer of complexity. Your forward velocity also directly impacts your gliding speed once you hit water surfaces, which makes it really fun to just dash around. These interconnected movement systems create tactical depth that also keep exploration fresh and engaging, even after extended play sessions. Technical glitches and indoor environment instability can't overshadow the fundamental achievement here, at least not for me. Astra's movement mechanics alone make her one of the most enjoyable character releases for open world exploration in any gacha game I've played, and I tend to be the type of player that enjoys these games the most for the open world exploration. These moments of genuine innovation in character kits represent Tower of Fantasy at its creative peak, demonstrating why players return despite technical frustrations. And if Attack on Titan isn't nostalgia enough, Astra's combat system draws heavily from Star Wars lightsaber aesthetics. During her Photon Surge mode, when activated, her basic attacks transform into lightsaber combos complete with satisfying audio design that captures that iconic hum of energy blades. The visual effects mixed with the Attack on Titan grappling mechanics creates a really satisfying Jedi, Spider-Man combat fantasy with fluid sword movements and energy trails that feel cinematic. So with all this carefully crafted goodness for her combat system, that's what made it even more frustrating that it's so limited in space environments, where her abilities deal only 1 damage to enemies, forcing players into mandatory mecha combat instead of experiencing these well-designed mechanics. And now with the 5.1 release of Astra's story, we understand more of how her aesthetic design reinforces her narrative background. Her mother named her after the Starship Pixie anime, hoping Astra would become a guiding light to others. This inspiration manifests through prismatic gradients transitioning between teal, pink, and yellow, color combinations that feel sci-fi and retrofuturistic, matching the update's atmospheric tone. These vibrant accent colors ground themselves throughout muted neutral tones that shift dynamically based on the time of day. The reactive wearable tech they've been doing represents another exciting innovation from Hotta Studio, with Astra's night mode outfit glimmering like actual stars. This adaptive clothing system also feels especially appropriate for her character, someone who embodies the hope and guidance that stars represent for space travelers. Visual parallels to Starship Pixie character designs aren't accidental. They reinforce her role-playing escapism while connecting her personal mythology to the broader themes of finding light in infinite darkness. The more time I spent with Astra specifically, the more I appreciated her design, voice acting, and background lore. While her story delivery felt rushed and occasionally corny, the underlying character development carried genuine emotional weight. Understanding Astra's trauma from losing Carrot in the Asher incident created context for her behavior throughout the expansion, and context for the consequences of what happened in the trailer that introduced this patch update. Her fascination with anime and escapist role-playing as Starship Pixie revealed authentic coping mechanisms, using fantasy to process professional failure and personal guilt. Most compelling was her deliberate avoidance of children during Driftstar Haven negotiations, driven by fear of losing, hurting, or endangering another child the way she failed Carrot. When I first encountered the child in Astra's story arc, my immediate reaction was, ugh, great. Here we go again on another Genshin childish plot loop, but I genuinely chuckled when Astra said,
"Nope, not interested. Bye, kid."
The game seemed to poke fun of the ridiculous story arcs common amongst its competition, helping children uncover secrets of ancient statues to unlock primordial tombs filled with mystical powers. Instead, we got something grounded, Peeking behind the curtain revealed a secular human story of how these statues came to be, while exploring how children, much like Astra herself, much like me and you, create fantasies through imagination to cope with difficult circumstances. This child, experiencing the harsh realities of Driftstar Haven life, a victim of the Kailo incident that sent their civilization adrift, of pirate attacks during resource struggles, uses mythology as emotional survival. These stories can feel absurd and out of this world, but as players, if you have ever gone through similar emotions, you find ways to make them feel real. We create mythological figures to explain human experience and make that experience richer, more colorful, more alive. From fairy tales to anime, these narratives inspire generations and translate through decades, centuries, sometimes millennia. It's that generational game of telephone that makes us lose sight of the original stories, but in doing so, understand them in grander fragments, out of context. Tower of Fantasy's best moments capture this truth, how fantasy serves as both escape and explanation for the weight of existence. Interestingly enough, some smaller narrative moments achieve genuine emotional impact. The stranded astronaut rescue missions often carried more weight than the main story beats. These brief encounters, some of them humorous, others pretty dark, felt authentic because they avoided overwrought explanation. Marlin's arc in Astra's story mission also stood out for similar reasons. His transformation from corporate pilot to secret protector of refugees unfolded through holographic recordings. It was a lot of exposition, but it had an emotional chord. These glimpses suggest that there's a lot of narrative potential buried under the expansion's larger structural problems. Watching Tower of Fantasy struggle with its own ambitions resonates with my experience in creative work. I've been the son who missed family dinners chasing impossible deadlines, the artist producing work that satisfied clients just enough, while leaving me completely creatively empty. The pressures to constantly innovate in games or in creative industries often conflict with honoring what already works, abandoning proven approaches for untested ideas, then wondering why the results felt hollow despite technical achievements. Sometimes you need to lose to understand what actually matters. I've experienced this cycle repeatedly. Projects that failed so miserably that they taught me lessons that success never could. Each failure became a launching pad for something better. You don't slingshot forward by avoiding the fall, you embrace it. You learn from the impact, and you use that momentum to reach heights you couldn't achieve before. Tower of Fantasy's character arcs understand this truth, even when the broader game struggles with execution. Speaking of that slingshot effect, Hotta Studio's upcoming Neverness to Everness suggests they've absorbed some hard lessons from Tower of Fantasy struggles, including some buzz that there might be the elimination of the controversial 50/50 pity system on featured banners. Built on Unreal Engine 5 with NVIDIA DLSS and RTX support, the technical foundation appears more robust than Tower of Fantasy's Unreal Engine 4 infrastructure. What makes Neverness to Everness promising isn't just its anime GTA concepts, though. It's how the design philosophy seems to prioritize player agency over forced systems. Players can collect and modify sports cars, buy and design apartments, run businesses, and explore freely without mandatory gameplay restrictions. The urban setting supports character abilities rather than negating them. The narrative approach is still to be determined for me. Embracing lighthearted comedic storytelling over the heavy-handed social commentary that weighs down Tower of Fantasy's dialogue, though, might be a refreshing take. Sometimes the best way to handle serious themes in games is through characters who feel genuinely human rather than just political mouthpieces. Neverness to Everness raises an uncomfortable question, though, that haunts the Tower of Fantasy community. Will Hotta Studio kill their existing game? Tower of Fantasy already struggles with declining player engagement, technical instability, and resource allocation issues. When NTE launches with superior technology and a fresh marketing push, where does that leave Tower of Fantasy's future? The concerns feel legitimate. Development resources are finite, and maintaining two live service games simultaneously demands enormous ongoing investment from both Hotta Studio and the player. If NTE succeeds, Tower of Fantasy could become the neglected older sibling, receiving minimal updates while slowly bleeding players to the newer, shinier alternative. For potential new players, this uncertainty creates a rational investment barrier. Why spend money on characters and progression systems that might lose development support within a year or two? The smart approach becomes treating Tower of Fantasy as a free-to-play experience, enjoy the content without financial commitment until the game's longevity becomes clearer. This hesitation compounds Tower of Fantasy's existing problems. Reduced revenue from cautious players could accelerate the decline cycle, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where fear of the game dying might actually bring on its demise. Despite all these concerns, I find myself hoping for a different outcome. Tower of Fantasy's world and characters have captured something unique in the anime MMORPG space, a combination that few games attempt. The Kailo Sector's exploration of isolation, corporate manipulation, and survivor psychology creates emotional resonance that transcends the technical problems. Rather than abandoning Tower of Fantasy, I hope Hotta Studio uses NTE's technical advances to upgrade their existing game. Imagine Kailo Sector running on Unreal Engine 5, with fully stable rendering and consistent performance. The foundation exists for something remarkable. It just needs proper technical support. The anime MMORPG genre remains frustratingly underserved despite obvious demand. Players seeking persistent worlds with anime aesthetics, complex character development, and ongoing narrative expansion have limited quality options. Tower of Fantasy has occupied a unique position in this space, pushing boundaries that more conservative developers were avoiding entirely. But with the latest announcements this year, it looks like things are about to change. Hotta Studios has an experimental spirit that has brought a lot of value to the genre. Rather than viewing NTE as Tower of Fantasy's replacement, I hope that both games can serve different audiences and creative goals. Tower of Fantasy could continue to explore complex sci-fi themes and technical innovation, while NTE pursues more accessible urban fantasy and social gameplay. The market has room for both approaches if Hotta Studio commits to supporting their existing investment alongside new projects. Tower of Fantasy's limitations mirror creative industry frustrations I know intimately. Projects launch before they're ready because market pressures demand constant output. Features that work in isolation but break when integrated with existing systems. Teams pushing innovation while fighting resource constraints and unrealistic expectations. The game's struggles feel familiar because they reflect contradictions I navigate daily, trying to create meaningful work within systems designed for rapid consumption and immediate monetization. When character investment conflicts with gameplay innovation, it exposes the tension between artistic vision and commercial reality. Players demonstrate remarkable tolerance for technical problems because the underlying vision resonates. Community forums split between passionate defense and frustrated criticism. This loyalty stems from recognition that few mobile games attempt comparable ambition. Players accept glitches as the cost of innovation, though patience has limits when fundamental systems consistently malfunction or remain broken for multiple patches, like the dorm photos, which has never worked on the PS5. Tower of Fantasy's 5.0 Kailo Sector asks something of us that most games don't. It requires imagination, not just to envision what the creators intended, but to see past the glitches and frame rate drops to glimpse something genuinely ambitious underneath. Experiencing Kailo demands we fill in the gaps with our own capacity for wonder. The expansion mirrors its own themes in unexpected ways, just as its characters drift through space facing technical limitations and resource constraints. We as players must navigate broken systems and imperfect execution to find meaning. We become explorers in uncharted territory, discovering that the journey through imperfection can teach us as much as any polished experience. Space exploration has always required people willing to push boundaries that others are too uncertain to approach. The early astronauts didn't wait for perfect technology. They climbed into experimental capsules and trusted that human ingenuity would overcome whatever failures awaited them. Tower of Fantasy operates with similar audacity, launching ideas before the supporting systems are fully developed, hoping that players' imagination can bridge the technical void. There's something profound about games that ask us to become co-creators through our own patience and vision. We learn to see past what's broken to what could be whole. We discover that our capacity to find beauty in imperfect things might be more valuable than consuming flawless entertainment. Most importantly, we practice the kind of imaginative generosity that lets us grow stronger through our own failures, knowing that every stumble teaches us something essential about pushing forward into uncertain territory. If you also found ways to see past the imperfections in the 5.0 update, leave your thoughts below. I would love to hear from you. But thank you for your time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.